when you've got a hazy shot like this, it's very flat in tone, the shadows aren't very dark and the highlights aren't very bright comparative to the shadows. So we can use levels, of course, to tweak that. If we go to the levels adjustment there, and then we can look at the histogram and see, yeah, there's lots of highlight detail and midtones, but the shadows are really weak, so we can remap them to make them stronger by dragging the shadow slider just underneath the graph like so. So that's improved the shot. The shadows are darker, and the highlights as well we can brighten up by dragging the highlight slider to the right. But that's taking a little bit of time. There are faster ways to tweak contrast in shots like this. So what I'll do is close that, bin the adjustment layer, and start again. This time what we'll do is a quick trick. Drag this background layer onto the create new layer icon to copy it, and then set the blending mode to overlay, and that will lighten the highlights and darken the shadows and give you a bit more contrast very, very quickly. But in this case it's not quite perfect. The highlights are really blown out, so what we can do is reduce the opacity to try and get a compromise between shadow detail and highlight detail. So that's kind of working okay, but it's not as good as levels, so let's bin that and try another trick. Let's create another levels adjustment layer, but this time instead of tweaking the import level sliders, let's just ignore it and let's change the blending mode instead. So if we go to screen, that will lighten the shot, and if we go to multiply, that will darken the shot, and that's actually giving us quite a good result. Now if we need to adjust that, we can change opacity again, and 38 points here, 38% is worth about a stop. So if we go to around about 70 and then another 8, so 62, that's adjusting it by about a stop on the camera's aperture, if you like. So that's another scientific way to try and tweak your exposure using the opacity slider. So that's another option there. Let's just turn it on and off, and you can see we've tweaked the tones and made a better looking picture. And because we've created an adjustment layer, we can burn and dodge by using the beeper brush tool, and then if we use a white brush on the mask, it won't make any difference, but if we use a black brush, it will stop that particular area, and that's lightening those specific areas like so. Or if we change the opacity of the brush to 50%, it makes a less noticeable and more subtle adjustment. So that's a cool way of dodging and burning using a layer mask on an adjustment layer.